Hello everybody, this is our groove video for the week. I'm going to do something similar to what I did in the vocal technique and warm-up. We're going to use the psalm, and I'm going to look at groove in a slightly different way. We've been talking about it mostly in terms of rhythm, and the word groove I think kind of focuses on that. I think the way I understand the word is that it's very expansive. It it's a very big word. It's not just rhythm, but it does kind of have this feeling of it being kind of rhythm focused. And I've thought for a while, I think it's a really nice word, and I thought, well, what do we as classical musicians have? What kind of word do we use that's similar to this? And I think a word that we use that's similar to this is line. I don't know if any of you have heard that word before, but you might hear somebody say that singer sings with a beautiful line. That was a beautiful line. And what we mean, if you're a singer, an instrumental player, even a piano player, an organ player, you talk about line. So if you think about a phrase, it's like there's this sense of it. People describe it in different ways. They'll talk when you're, beginner, intermediate. They'll say, well, you crescendo and then you decrescendo. Kind of, the phrase gets, talking about phrases, it gets louder and then it gets softer. It's, there's all of these things to talk about it being a legato. It's all like a beautiful legato makes a beautiful line. You see my hand doing this a lot because it's kind of the idea of line. There's like this thing moving. There's this thing flowing through. It speeds up toward the peak and then it kind of comes back down. There's this like up and down thing we as classical musicians talk a lot about. We talk about line. So there's groove, which we've been talking about, and that people who are from musics that are more rhythmically focused, and line I think comes from music like classical music, which tends to be more pitch focused. I'm just going to tell you what I think about it. Nobody's has ever told me this is true. This is just what I think. So you'll have to see if it's true by experimenting with it yourself. But I think that both of these words, what's really happening is you can't point to anything and say it's this. It's a state of mind that the performer gets into. This idea of a flow state. And people say that he's in the groove. They use it as a verb. They use it as something that you're doing. We don't have that. Line doesn't really work. You can't. But anyway, it's when your mind gets, this is why I talk about this a lot, when your mind gets relaxed and expanded and very focused, then these things happen very naturally. And I think, like if you think about your mind when it's distracted, I'll use myself as an example. I do morning prayer every morning, and I'll find myself chanting this, singing or chanting, and I'll have forgotten what I get distracted, and I'll be like, what was I just doing? Even though I did it like 3 seconds ago. Our minds are prone, my mind is prone to distraction. And when you're distracted, there's not much, then probably not much interesting, there's not much interesting things going on. But when you're in the groove, when you're making a beautiful line, when you're in this kind of flow state, then you're right there, you're able to do all of these things. So it's not just a crescendo, it's not just rubato, it's not just legato, it's not just being in the rhythm, although there's all of these things happening, but you're just able to do a lot of those kinds of things. So the reason I say that is because as musicians, this should be the primary thing I think that we obviously have to be able to do something. You got to be able to sing, you got to be able to play an instrument. But once we can do that, then we should be focusing on getting into this flow state. I think it's very important. So since I'm doing this series on groove, I thought I'd take a little break. We'll go back to rhythm. The reason I talk so much about rhythm is I think, in my experience, my students and my choirs, this is the aspect of music that is our biggest weakness. So I think it's worth going there. It also has the biggest effects once I hear students or choirs start to get this sense of, rhythmic flow, the groove, and then pay attention to that and be in it, everything improves a lot without a lot of work. So that's why I have done and will continue to do that. But for today, I want you to think about groove. This is because it's been on my mind. I just wanted to share this with you. I think it's really a mental state. So as we do everything we do, whether it's vocal technique or warm-up or we're trying to sight read, anything, kind of be aware of your mind state. Be aware, is your mind, keep trying to remind yourself, you can get distracted and then come back. Okay, relaxed and wide, let's remember where I am, and yeah. Okay, so let's go to the psalm. I'm going to stop talking And what we're going to do is the same thing we did kind of in the vocal technique, only now we're going to simplify the psalm a little bit. And we're going to talk about, so it's interesting chanting a psalm because there's definitely not a fixed groove like we have in music. Instead, we have the rhythm that we use when we speak. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but if I talk like this, it is really hard to understand. But nobody talks like that, right? Nobody ever taught us rhythm in speaking, but we just do it. We learned it from our parents. We learned it from hearing everybody else. We repeated it. But we talk in this really nice. We use pitch and we use rhythm, and we do it perfectly. We're masters of speech. Nobody ever has to work to understand us. I don't have to think about what I'm doing. It just comes out. And we want to get to that same level with music. But to go to the psalm, what this has to do with chanting the psalm is we're going to use the same kind of rhythm that we use in speech. We're going to slightly modify it, but it's not going to be in time. It's going to be very similar to what we do when we're talking. So let's share my screen. Here's the psalm again. This time let's not do the plain chant because I don't want you to have to think about that. Let's just sing on one pitch. So monotone chant, one tone. And I want you to kind of pay attention to the flow. So if I was going to say this first line, just say it. I'd say, the Lord, the God of gods, has spoken. So now when we chant it, that's basically the kind of, the Lord, space, the God of gods, has spoken. Kind of the same rhythmic ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba. And it's going to be slightly, because we're singing it, it'll slightly slow down perhaps. They'll get a little bit of space. But I want you to pay attention to that flow. And the practice here is that, you're just like when you're feeling the groove in music, you're feeling the groove of your speech and you're letting that be free. So if I sing, the Lord, the God of gods, has spoken. He has called the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. So see if you can, as you're reading this, as you're, chanting the psalm, you don't have it memorized, you're reading it. So you kind of have to look ahead and imagine. You have to see, how would you say, you have to imagine in your head, he has called the earth. See the stress, he has called. He has called the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. So the same stresses we use in speech, we're going to use in our rhythmic flow, we're going to use in the way we chant it. So, without further ado, let's just sing 6 verses, and then you can, together, and then you can play around with this at home, focusing on this feeling of the groove, the feeling of the rhythmic flow of the psalm. So, here we go. The Lord, the God of gods, has spoken. He has called the earth from the rising of the sun to its setting. Out of Zion, perfect in its beauty, God reveals himself in glory. Our God will come and will not keep silence. Before him there is a consuming flame, and round about him a raging storm. He calls the heavens and the earth from above to witness the judgment of his people. Gather before me my loyal followers, those who have made a covenant with me and sealed it with sacrifice. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this one a little shorter, but you get the idea. That's another, if you just stick it to a monotone chant, and then you can focus, you can spend some time working on the feeling of flow with English text. And this is going to apply even though you're not doing it in a groove, by putting your awareness in a rhythmic groove like we would do in a song if we're singing a hymn or a song. being aware of the text and the stress of the text and the feeling of that movement is going to be the same thing. You're just going to have to put it on a rhythmic template like we normally do with music. I'm done talking. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and check out the other ones, and we'll see you later.